Chapter 219. Little brother in front, please wait a moment. Just as Xianxia was thinking about what to do next, a voice suddenly sounded from behind him, followed by a flurry of hurried footsteps. Hearing this, Xianxia paused. When he turned his head, he saw a group of fully armed soldiers quickly running towards him. The two people at the front were middle-aged men. When Xianxia's gaze fell on one of the middle-aged men wearing armor, his eyes narrowed. He had seen this person not long ago. It was Wake City's city guard commander Duo Li. Seeing that these people were Wake City's city guard, Xianxia's expression changed slightly. He began to wonder if these people were here to arrest him for destroying the Zhou clan. Although Xianxia wasn't afraid of these people, he still had to find Uncle Kendall's family in Wake City. Because of this relationship, he didn't want to become enemies with the local tyrant of Wake City. Little brother, please wait a moment. Seeing that Xianxia had stopped, Commander Duo Li shouted again. He then led a group of soldiers in front of Xianxia. Xianxia's gaze fell on the man standing beside Commander Duo Li for a while. His gaze then fell on Commander Duo Li as he asked, "Commander Duo Li, what's the matter?" Commander Duo Li's face revealed a friendly smile. He pointed at the middle-aged man standing beside him and said, "Little brother, this is Wake City's city lord." Wake City's city lord. Hearing this, Xianxia was slightly startled. His gaze fell on Wake City's city lord. He immediately cupped his hands and said, "So it's the city lord's lord. This one is Xianxia. Sorry for the disrespect." When Wake City's city lord heard that Xianxia was at least a great saint master at the age of 20, he had already determined that he was someone from a large clan with a very strong background. Now that he saw that Xianxia didn't have the slightest arrogance of someone from a large clan, his impression of Xianxia improved quite a bit. Wake City's city lord also cupped his hands and said with a smile, "So little brother's name is Xianxia. This one is Yunli. If little brother Xianxia doesn't mind, you can call me old brother Yun. As for the city lord's greetings, there's no need for that." Seeing Xianxia's calm expression, Yunli was even more certain of his thoughts. Whether it was Xianxia's calm expression or the unique aura he unconsciously emitted, it was not something that an ordinary person could possess. Even though Xianxia was only wearing cheap cotton clothes, the city lord didn't look down on him. Instead, he admired him even more. Hearing Wake City's city lord Yunli's words, Xianxia already knew that Yunli was trying to worm his way into being friends with him. However, he didn't take it to heart because with the current Yunli, Xianxia really didn't take him to heart. "May I know why City Lord Yunli is looking for me?" Xianxia's expression was calm as a faint smile hung on his face. His tone was extremely calm. Yunli laughed and said, "Little brother Xianxia, it's not convenient to talk on the streets. I wonder if you have the time to come over to my mansion?" Hearing this, Xianxia's heart moved. He immediately thought of Kendall's family and agreed without any hesitation. The city lord's mansion was located in the center of Wake City. It was the most majestic building in Wake City, occupying 10 square kilometers of land. It was the largest building in Wake City. Even the mercenary guild couldn't compare to it. Inside the city lord's mansion, there were teams of soldiers patrolling everywhere. Whether it was in the open or in the dark, there were always people watching the surroundings. It could be said that the city was heavily guarded. Within the city lord's mansion's large hall, Wake City's city lord Yunli gave up sitting on the city lord's throne and was willing to lower his status to sit opposite of Xianxia. Beside him, there were two young girls around 17 or 18 years old. They emitted a youthful energy as they served tea and pastries to the two of them from time to time. After the two of them casually chatted for a while, they quickly got to the main topic. "Little brother Xianxia, I'm sure you know that our Wake City is about to be attacked by a wave of magical beasts. This is a test of life and death. If we can't defend against the magical beasts, then the hundreds of thousands of people in Wake City will become food for the magical beasts. Therefore, I hope that little brother Xianxia can help our Wake City survive this calamity." Yunli's smile vanished as he said sternly to Xianxia. He spoke as if he was negotiating with Xianxia. Xianxia chuckled and said, "City Lord thinks too highly of me. I'm just a single person with little power. How can I help Wake City defend against thousands of magical beasts?" Hearing Xianxia's words, Yunli's face tightened. From Jianxin's words, he could tell that Jianxin wasn't willing to help Wake City defend against the magical beasts. But without waiting for him to speak, Jianxin continued, "Since I've come to Wake City, I'll do my best. However, whether or not I'll be able to successfully defend against the magical beasts, I can't guarantee it." Jianxin's words caused Yun Li's furrowed brows to relax. He smiled and said, "With little brother Jianxin's words, I'm relieved. If little brother Jianxin can join us, then I'm sure our Wake City will be able to safely survive this calamity." At this moment, City Guard Commander Duo Li hurriedly ran in from outside. He quickly walked in front of City Lord Yun Li and looked at Jianxin with a complicated expression. Then he whispered something into the City Lord's ear. Wake City Lord Yun Li's expression gradually became serious. In the end, it was filled with seriousness. Looking at Jianxin, his gaze also became somewhat complicated. Seeing Yun Li's gradually changing expression, Jianxin felt a burst of curiosity in his heart. Although he didn't know what had caused such a huge impact on Yun Li, from the way Yun Li and Duo Li looked at him, he could guess that this matter most likely involved him. Chapter 220. City Lord Yun Li's expression became more and more solemn as he listened to Commander Doli's whisper. After Commander Doli finished speaking, he stood behind Yun Li and looked at Jianxin with a complicated expression, but didn't leave. Yun Li's eyebrows furrowed as he looked at the calm Jianxin sitting in front of him. After hesitating for a while, he finally opened his mouth and said, "Little brother Jianxin, a year ago, a huge event happened in Wake City. The young master of the Tianxiong clan, Tianxiong Kong, was killed in the city. According to reliable sources, the person who killed Tianxiong Kong was a youth around the same age as little brother Jianxin. Most importantly, that person's name is also Jianxin. Presumably, the two of them are the same person." Hearing this, Jianxin's expression didn't change. He had already guessed that this would happen, so he didn't deny it. Instead, he smiled and said, "City Lord's guess is correct. That person is indeed me." Although he had already guessed that this would happen, when Jianxin personally admitted it, Yun Li felt his heartbeat quicken. Although the enmity between Jianxin and the Tianxiong clan had nothing to do with him, this was a critical time. Wake City was about to face another wave of magical beasts. This was related to the life and death of hundreds of thousands of people in Wake City. There was no room for carelessness. At this time, everyone needed to unite and gather all their strength to protect Wake City. As for Jianxin and the Tianxiong clan, no matter which side they were on, they would be a great help to Wake City. However, the enmity between the two sides gave Yun Li a huge headache. This was because Yun Li knew that if Jianxin and the Tianxiong clan were to fight, both sides would suffer great losses. If this was a normal situation, Yun Li wouldn't even care about it, but the current situation was different. Right now, he had to prevent the enmity between Jianxin and the Tianxiong clan from erupting. At the very least, before the end of the magical beast wave, he couldn't let Wake City lose too much of its strength. Yun Li solemnly looked at Jianxin and said, "Little brother Jianxin, I have also heard of the enmity between you and the Tianxiong clan. Originally, I didn't want to interfere, but now that Wake City is about to face a life and death situation, we need to preserve our strength. Therefore, I hope that you can temporarily put aside your enmity with the Tianxiong clan and wait until the end of the magical beast wave. What do you think, little brother Jianxin?" Yun Li's tone was as if he was negotiating. In his heart, he had already placed Jianxin in a very high position. Whether it was his personal strength or his background, he couldn't be underestimated. Jianxin slightly frowned, then gently shook his head and said, "Lord Yun Li, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you." Hearing this, Yun Li's face slightly changed. The thing he was most worried about was about to happen, but he didn't give up on persuading Jianxin. He sincerely said, "Little brother Jianxin, please consider the big picture. Moreover, the Tianxiong clan's strength is much stronger than the Zhou clan's. Although the Tianxiong clan lost their title as the #1 clan in Wake City after the tragedy a year ago, that is only in terms of business. In terms of strength, the Tianxiong clan is still the #1 clan in Wake City. They cannot be underestimated." Hearing this, Jianxin's heart stirred. He said, "Lord Yun Li, besides Tianxiong Lai, what other experts do the Tianxiong clan have?" Yunli hesitated for a moment, then said, aside from Tianxiong Lai, the Tianxiong clan also has an intermediate great saint master expert. This person is Tianxiong Lai's younger brother, Tianxiong Daoyin. In addition, Tianxiong Lai has a very good relationship with several large mercenary groups in Wake City. If they join forces, they will be a very frightening force in Wake City. After hearing this news, Jianxin's expression didn't change in the slightest. It was as if he didn't take Yunli seriously at all. Instead, he leisurely picked up the tea on the table and took a sip. Seeing how calm Jianxin was, as if he didn't put the Tianxiong clan in his eyes at all, Yunli couldn't help but be even more certain of his thoughts. It was likely that Jianxin really did have a very strong power behind him. Perhaps, at this moment, there was a hidden expert protecting this youth in front of him. Yunli was also a very meticulous person. Seeing that Jianxin had already made up his mind not to forgive the Tianxiong clan, he didn't continue to linger on this topic to avoid the opposite effect. To him, Jianxin was much more important than the Tianxiong clan. Ignoring the fact that Jianxin didn't have a strong background behind him, just the fact that Jianxin was able to kill a great saint master at such a young age was enough to see his outstanding talent. In the future, it would not be impossible for him to become a peak expert that would become famous throughout the continent. By the time Jianxin left the City Lord's mansion, the sky had already darkened. In the City Lord's mansion, Jianxin didn't mention the matter of Uncle Kendall's family. From his point of view, it would be wiser and safer to wait until the matter of the Tianxiong clan was completely resolved before asking Yunli City to help him search for Uncle Kendall's family. Seeing that it was getting late and that the two previous battles had taken a toll on Jianxin, Jianxin wasn't in a hurry to find trouble with the Tianxiong clan. Instead, he found a nearby inn to stay for the time being. Time quickly passed, and when the first light of dawn had just risen, Jianxin, who was sitting cross-legged on his bed, opened his eyes. After a night of rest, he had completely recovered from yesterday's exhaustion and was now in peak condition. When Jianxin left the inn, the streets outside were filled with the chatter of passers-by. They were all discussing the matter of the Zhou clan and the Zhou mercenary group being destroyed. The Zhou clan and the Zhou mercenary group had quite a bit of fame in Wake City. In just one night, the news of their destruction had spread throughout the city. This news was like a heavy bomb to the people of Wake City. Regardless of whether it was the streets or alleys, the entire city was filled with the chatter of passers-by. At the same time, all the big and small powers in Wake City received the news and sent people to investigate the truth of the matter. Chapter 221. The Tianxiong clan was located in the northern part of Wake City. At this moment, in the main courtyard of the Tianxiong clan, there was a grand meeting hall. The current patriarch of the Tianxiong clan, Tianxiong Lai, was sitting at the head of the table. Below him were 2 rows of people of different ages. Each of them had an extraordinary aura, and their eyes shined brightly. A year ago, Jianxin had caused great losses to the Tianxiong clan, causing them to lose their position as the #1 clan in Wake City. However, those who knew the strength of the Tianxiong clan knew that even though they had suffered great losses a year ago, their peak strength hadn't decreased by much. In terms of strength, the Tianxiong clan was still the #1 clan in Wake City. Among them, the most eye-catching person was Tianxiong Lai. Although his strength was still at the intermediate Great Saint Master level, he had the Earth attribute Saint Force, which gave him a unique advantage. Even peak Great Saint Masters weren't necessarily his match. However, in terms of controlling the businesses in Wake City, the Tianxiong clan was no longer as strong as before. This was because the death of Tianxiong Lai's only son, Tianxiong Kong, had been a huge blow to him. He no longer had the heart to manage the clan's businesses. Therefore, although the Tianxiong clan was still the strongest clan in Wake City, in terms of business, it was declining by the day. In the past year, Tianxiong Lai had become much more haggard, and a few strands of white hair had appeared on his head. Tianxiong Lai smiled as he looked at the people sitting below him. These people were all familiar faces in Wake City. If anyone recognized them, they would be shocked to the point that their jaws would drop. This was because these people were the leaders of the large mercenary groups in Wake City. The mercenary groups they represented were all quite famous in Wake City. Each mercenary group had over 100 members, and their strength wasn't weak. Among them, there were even 2 old men who were the leaders of 2 large clans in Wake City. These people all had very high statuses in Wake City. Unless something big happened, it was very rare to see them. But today, they were all gathered in the Xianxia clan. This was truly shocking. Everyone, I have invited you here today because I have a matter that I hope you can help me with. Xianxia said in a low voice as he stared at the representatives of the various mercenary groups. Xianxia, we've known each other for more than 10 years. If there's anything you need my help with, just ask. As long as it's within my power, I won't refuse. As soon as Xianxia's voice fell, a tall and sturdy middle-aged man sitting below said with a smile. That's right, Xianxia. Given our friendship, if you need any help, just ask. Don't be so wishy-washy, like a sissy. The one who spoke was a dark-skinned burly man. His upper body was bare, and he only wore a pair of shorts. The bulging muscles on his body gave people a strong visual impact. It was as if this burly man could easily punch through a steel plate with a single punch. Soon after, the other people sitting in the main hall also expressed their support for Xianxia. Hearing these words, Xianxia's serious face finally revealed a trace of a smile. But then, as if he had thought of something, the smile on his face was replaced by a deep sadness. Looking around, Xianxia's eyes revealed a trace of sorrow as he said, "Brothers, do you remember the incident of my son, Xianxia, being killed a year ago?" Hearing this, the people below looked at each other, their faces becoming serious. But they didn't say anything and quietly waited for Xianxia to continue. Xianxia continued, "A year ago, an outsider broke into Wake City. Not only did he kill my son, Xianxia, he also brought great losses to the Xianxia clan. Although I personally chased after him, he was too cunning. He took advantage of the Magic Beast Mountain Range's complex terrain to kill many of my clan's experts. In the end, he escaped." Towards the end of his speech, Xianxia's face was filled with endless hatred. He hated Genshin to the bone. Not only because Genshin had killed his son, but also because he had been toyed with by Genshin in the Magical Beast Mountain Range. To him, this was the greatest humiliation. Ever since he had started cultivating, he had never been put in such a difficult position by someone so much weaker than him. "Xianxia, could it be that the murderer of your son has come to Wake City again?" the dark-skinned man asked in a muffled voice. Xianxia nodded slightly and said, "I'm sure everyone knows what happened yesterday. The Zhou mercenary group and the Zhou clan were exterminated in a single day. After investigation, we found out that the person responsible for the extermination of the Zhou clan and the Zhou mercenary group was a youth who looked to be around 20 years old. His name is Genshin." Hearing this, the faces of the leaders of the various mercenary groups became somewhat dignified, mixed with a strong sense of surprise. They had just received the news about the Zhou clan's annihilation, but it wasn't as accurate as the news that Xianxia had received. What made them surprised was that the person who had annihilated the Zhou clan and the Zhou mercenary group in a single day was actually a young man who was only about 20 years old. This made them feel that it was hard to believe. After hearing Xianxia's words, the entire hall became silent. After a while, the silence was finally broken by an old man. "Xianxia, if this Genshin was able to exterminate the Zhou clan in a single day, then his strength shouldn't be weak." Xianxia slightly shook his head, frowned, and thought for a while before saying, "A year ago I fought with him, so I was very clear about his strength. At most, he was a Saint Master. At that time, he couldn't even withstand a single blow from me. However, his speed was very fast. Even if I wanted to catch up to him, it would take some effort. Because of this, he was able to escape from my hands time and time again. Furthermore, his sword attack speed was also very fast. Those who were at the same level as him wouldn't be able to last long against him. With this method, he was able to kill many of my Xianxia clan's Saint Masters in the Magical Beast Mountain Range. Now that it has been more than a year, even if his strength has increased, it would be very limited. No matter how outstanding his talent is, I don't believe that he could have broken through from the Saint Master level to the peak of the Great Saint Master level or even the Earth Saint Master level in a short period of time. Therefore, to exterminate the Zhou clan, he must have asked for help. Tianxiong Lai, are you saying that you want us to help you capture the murderer of your son? An ordinary-looking middle-aged man asked. Chapter 222. While Tianxiong Lai and the others were discussing in the main hall, at the entrance of the Tianxiong clan's courtyard, a young man wearing a white robe appeared. He was about 20 years old and was very handsome. His handsome features could be said to be perfect, and coupled with the unique temperament that was naturally exuding from his body, this young man looked even more extraordinary than before. This young man was Genshin. Looking at the courtyard in front of him, Genshin's calm eyes flashed with a strong killing intent. The scene of him being chased by the Tianxiong clan and escaping from Wake City was still vivid in his mind. Although Genshin's heart could not be said to be so narrow-minded that he could not tolerate even a little bit of sand, but towards his enemies he would definitely not show mercy. Kindness must be repaid with kindness, and hatred must be repaid with vengeance. A drop of water must be repaid with a spring, and a deep hatred must be repaid 100 times over. This was Genshin's principle in his previous life. Today, he still could not change the way he conducted himself in his previous life. The courtyard of the Tianxiong clan's residence was simple and unadorned. The large door was wide open, and from the outside, one could see some of the scenery inside. At the entrance, there were 8 burly men standing there, their eyes shining brightly as they scanned the surroundings. Genshin slowly walked towards the entrance of the Tianxiong clan's courtyard, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. From his appearance, one could not see the slightest bit of hostility from him. The 8 burly men guarding the entrance had long since discovered Genshin. Just as Genshin approached the entrance of the Tianxiong clan's courtyard, 2 of the burly men immediately stretched out their hands to block him. One of them shouted, "Stop, what are you doing?" Glancing at the 2 burly men, Genshin's face revealed a trace of a cold smile as he said, "I'm here to kill." Hearing this, the burly men were stunned. Genshin's sudden reply had actually left them stunned on the spot. However, in the next moment, a silver light flashed as Genshin's light wind sword pierced out like lightning. Before the burly men could react, the sharp blade of the light wind sword had already sliced through their throats. Genshin's attack was very sudden. With the strength of a great saint, how could the burly men block his sword? In the blink of an eye, the 8 burly men were killed by Genshin without any resistance. After killing a few people, Genshin leisurely stepped over the tall threshold and into the courtyard of the Tianxiong clan. "Who is it?" "Halt!" Just as Genshin stepped into the courtyard of the Tianxiong clan, a loud shout suddenly sounded out. Immediately after, 2 black figures shot towards Genshin from not too far away. Genshin coldly laughed and said, "The Tianxiong clan is truly worthy of being the #1 clan in Wake City. I never would have thought that there would be Saint Masters lying in ambush next to the entrance." The 2 Saint Masters were very fast. While Genshin was speaking, the 2 of them arrived in front of Genshin at the same time. 2 large swords suddenly appeared in their hands, carrying not weak Saint Qi as they mercilessly slashed towards Genshin. These 2 Saint Masters were both in charge of guarding the inner sect. As soon as Genshin stepped through the tall doorstep, the 2 of them discovered the corpses of the 8 men lying in the outer sect. As a result, they directly dealt a heavy blow to Genshin as soon as they arrived, not wasting any words at all. When the 2 saint weapons carrying not weak Saint Qi were less than half a meter away from Genshin's body, the previously hidden light wind sword suddenly appeared in Genshin's hand again. A silver light flashed as the light wind sword stabbed out twice with unbelievable speed. When the 2 large swords were still 3 inches away from Genshin, the 2 Saint Masters had already been pierced through by the light wind sword. After that, Genshin's body slightly swayed as if he had teleported 3 steps to the side, dodging the 2 large swords that were still coming towards him due to inertia. It was currently early in the morning. Within the courtyard of the Tianxiong clan, there were quite a few people doing their morning exercises. In addition, there were also people patrolling the area. As a result, The scene of Xianxia killing two Saint Masters was naturally seen by many people in the distance. Immediately, their expressions changed and they all cried out. "There's an assassin! Someone has come to cause trouble! An enemy has come, everyone prepare yourselves!" The originally quiet courtyard of the Xianxia clan immediately became noisy as all kinds of cries of alarm came out from the mouths of the people. Immediately, a few people who thought they were not weak rushed towards Xianxia. Among the remaining people, there were also a few who were quick-witted and quickly ran towards the Xianxia clan's main hall to inform the Xianxia clan's leader, Xianxia Lai. Looking at the people who were rushing towards him, Xianxia's originally calm expression gradually became fierce as the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. Immediately after, he raised the light wind sword in his right hand and took the initiative to rush towards the people who were rushing towards him. With a flash of the silver light, the people who were close to Xianxia didn't even have time to wave their saint weapons before their throats were pierced by the light wind sword. Towards the people of the Xianxia clan, Xianxia was determined to kill them, so he didn't let a single one of them go. As the battle cries grew louder and louder, more and more people in the Xianxia clan were awakened and began to rush towards the source of the sound. The Xianxia clan was once the #1 clan in Wake City. Although they had declined over the past year, the clan's strength was still not to be underestimated. Just within the large courtyard, there were many people living there. As more and more people rushed over, Xianxia was gradually surrounded by people. Inside the Xianxia clan's main hall, Xianxia Lai was still sitting at the head of the table, discussing some matters with the leaders of the mercenary groups. At this moment, when he heard the battle cries coming from outside, he couldn't help but slightly wrinkle his brows. The leaders of the mercenary groups also silently exchanged glances with each other, their eyes filled with suspicion. "What's going on outside? Why is it so noisy?" Xianxia Lai immediately shouted towards the outside of the main hall, his voice filled with dissatisfaction. "Patriarch, someone has come to our Xianxia clan to cause trouble and kill people at the drop of a hat. 2 of our people have already died at his hands." Just as Xianxia Lai's voice fell, a young man rushed in from outside. Hearing this, Xianxia Lai's eyes flashed with a cold light as he said in a deep voice, "What? Someone actually dares to cause trouble in our Xianxia clan?" "Yes, Patriarch, that person is very strong. The 2 Saint Masters guarding the inner sect were killed by him in one move." The young man spoke again. Chapter 223. Within the Xianxia clan's courtyard, the sounds of battle shook the heavens. At this time, there were already hundreds of people pouring out from various parts of the courtyard, surrounding the battle so tightly that not even a drop of water could escape. The white-clothed Xianxia held the light wind sword in his hand as he elegantly shuttled through the crowd. While dodging attacks from all directions, he also killed the Xianxia clan's people. The silver light around his body constantly flickered, and every time it flickered, it would pierce through a person's throat, mercilessly reaping their lives. His movements were as smooth as flowing water. Even if he was surrounded by hundreds of people, he still had a calm expression on his face. "Stop!" Suddenly, a loud shout rang out. Hearing this, the Xianxia clan's guards immediately retreated, their eyes full of vigilance as they stared at Xianxia. Xianxia Lai walked over from the distance, and behind him were a few people of different ages. These people were the ones who had been in the main hall before, and each one of them represented a powerful faction in Wake City. Xianxia Lai's face was solemn as he walked into the field, but when his eyes swept over the dozens of guards who had already lost their lives, his face couldn't help but become gloomy. Finally, his cold gaze fell on Xianxia's face, which didn't seem very old. When Xianxia Lai saw Xianxia's appearance, his expression slightly changed. Immediately after, an intense killing intent flashed through his eyes. The way he looked at Xianxia was as if he was looking at a ferocious beast. "You are Xianxia." Xianxia Lai's eyes fiercely stared at Xianxia's indifferent face as he spoke each word slowly. In the depths of his eyes, there was a faint trace of red. Xianxia indifferently smiled and said, "Xianxia clan leader, I didn't think that you would still remember me." Xianxia Lai's body slightly trembled. Towards the murderer of his only son, there was no way he would ever forget. Even in his dreams, Jianxin's young face would occasionally appear in his mind. Although he had only seen Jianxin a few times, and it had already been more than a year, Jianxin's appearance had already been deeply imprinted in his mind, and he would never be able to forget it. Jianxin, I was just about to look for you, but I didn't think that you would take the initiative to deliver yourself to me. Since that's the case, then you will stay here forever. Tianxiong Lai's eyes filled with hatred as he stared at Jianxin, gnashing his teeth. Jianxin disdainfully snorted and said, Tianxiong Lai, you couldn't keep me here a year ago. A year later, you still can't keep me here. With your little Tianxiong clan, you don't have the qualifications to keep me here. Hearing this, Tianxiong Lai's eyes flashed with an ominous glint. A year ago, Jianxin had escaped from his clutches many times with the strength of a saint master, leaving him in a sorry state. To him, this was a shame that could not be washed away. However, Tianxiong Lai did not know that Jianxin's strength at that time was only at the high-level great saint stage, and there was still a small gap between him and a saint master. Boy, today I want to see how much you have grown in the past year. Guard the surroundings and prevent him from escaping. As soon as he finished speaking, a yellow light emerged from Tianxiong Lai's hand and quickly condensed into a large axe. Holding the axe, Tianxiong Lai rushed towards Jianxin with heavy steps. Ha! With a loud shout, Tianxiong Lai raised his axe high in the air. With a burst of saint force, he chopped down at Jianxin like a bolt of lightning. Jianxin's mouth curved into a cold smile. If it was a year ago, he would have definitely avoided this attack and not dared to meet it head-on. But now, he was no longer the same as before. A layer of hazy sword light emerged from the light wind sword and covered Jianxin's entire body. Afterwards, it turned into a bolt of silver lightning and fearlessly pierced towards the axe. Seeing that Jianxin was not dodging, Tianxiong Lai's eyes flashed with a cold light. He felt that Jianxin's actions were extremely stupid. A year ago, he had exchanged blows with Jianxin and was very clear about Jianxin's strength. He did not believe that Jianxin's strength had reached the same level as his in just a year. Tianxiong Lai roared and the Saint Qi on the axe grew even stronger. With a thunderous momentum, he attempted to destroy Jianxin's saint weapon in one fell swoop. Ding! The two saint weapons that were completely incomparable in size collided in the air. The saint force contained in the saint weapons collided with each other, immediately erupting with a boom. Energy ripples visible to the naked eye rapidly spread out with the two saint weapons at the center. When the energy ripples reached the ground, the hard stone floor began to crack inch by inch like a piece of tofu. The spiderweb-like cracks rapidly spread in all directions. When the two saint weapons collided, Tianxiong Lai's face suddenly changed. His eyes were filled with disbelief as he looked at Jianxin. In the depths of his eyes, there was a trace of shock. From this exchange of blows, Tianxiong Lai was clear about Jianxin's strength. Compared to a year ago, Jianxin's strength had completely changed. A year ago, if Jianxin had not relied on his speed to play hide and seek with him in the forest, he would have been able to crush Jianxin as easily as crushing an ant. However, a year later, that ant had grown to the point where he could face him head-on. This kind of speed of growth was simply unbelievable to Tianxiong Lai. Tianxiong Lai even felt that the Jianxin now was not the same person as the Jianxin of the past, but two different people. This was because the difference in strength between the Jianxin of a year ago and the Jianxin of a year ago was just too great. Jianxin staggered back a few steps. Although he was able to block Tianxiong Lai's attack head-on, he was still unable to fight evenly. Tianxiong Lai was a mid-level great saint master and his strength was limited, but because of his Saint Qi of the earth attribute, he had a unique advantage. Even a peak great saint master could not compare to him in terms of battle prowess. In this exchange, Jianxin was clearly at a disadvantage. On the other hand, Tianxiong Lai was still standing steadily on the battlefield, but his feet had sunk an inch into the ground. Chapter 224. Jianxin waved his sword, and a sharp sword qi broke free from the binding of the sword and shot towards Tianxiong Lai like a bolt of lightning. Facing the incoming sword qi, Tianxiong Lai didn't even try to dodge. Instead, he raised his axe in front of him to block. When Jianshan's sword qi hit Tianxiong Lai's axe, the powerful impact caused Tianxiong Lai's body to stop for a moment. However, his speed didn't decrease by much. At this moment, Jianshan's body flickered and turned into a blur as he rushed towards Tianxiong Lai. "You're courting death." Seeing Jianshan take the initiative to rush towards him, Tianxiong Lai's eyes flashed with a cold light. The axe in his hand was filled with saint force as it cut through the air, creating an ear-piercing sound. This time, Jianshan didn't want to meet Tianxiong Lai's attack head-on. Instead, he dodged Tianxiong Lai's axe, and at the same time, his light wind sword turned into a ray of silver light and pierced towards Tianxiong Lai's throat. The speed of the sword was extremely fast, more than twice as fast as Tianxiong Lai's axe. By the time Tianxiong Lai reacted, the light wind sword was already less than 2 feet away from his throat. Although Jianshan was at a disadvantage against Tianxiong Lai in a head-on clash, his strength wasn't his strength, but rather his speed. His speed was so fast that his opponent didn't even have time to react. What a fast sword! Tianxiong Lai's face suddenly changed. However, he was still a veteran of many battles. Strong earth saint force surged out from his body and wrapped around his upper body. When the light wind sword pierced through Tianxiong Lai's earth saint force barrier, the light wind sword paused for a moment. However, in the next moment, a strong sword qi shot out from the light wind sword and broke through the earth saint force barrier and continued towards Tianxiong Lai's throat. However, after this delay, Tianxiong Lai had already retreated and swung his axe towards the light wind sword. Jianshan flicked his wrist and the light wind sword turned into a silver light as it pierced out 3 times. Each strike accurately hit the same spot on the axe. The power of these 3 strikes overlapped with each other, creating an even more powerful force that knocked the axe back to where it came from. Both of Tianxiong Lai's hands were tightly gripping the handle of the axe. His face was filled with disbelief. Jianshan's 3 consecutive strikes were so powerful that his hands were slightly numb from the vibrations. Is this person really the Jianshan from a year ago? Tianxiong Lai asked himself. He found it hard to believe that Jianshan's strength had increased to such an extent in just a year's time. Just as this thought flashed through Tianxiong Lai's mind, a silver-white light shot towards him like a bolt of lightning. By the time Tianxiong Lai regained his senses, the light wind sword was already right in front of his throat. The sharp sword qi from the tip of the light wind sword had already pierced his throat, causing a faint trace of blood to appear on it. Tianxiong Lai's face turned pale with fright. In this moment of life and death, he immediately turned his head and pulled his neck to the side. So, just as Tianxiong Lai dodged the attack, a cold wind blew from his neck, accompanied by a slight pain. The sharp edge of the light wind sword almost brushed past Tianxiong Lai's neck, but the hazy glow from the sword had barely touched his neck. Even so, due to the distance, the hazy glow from the light wind sword only managed to cut through the skin on his neck. If he had dodged a little slower, then even if the light wind sword didn't directly pierce him, just the light wind sword's light wind sword would have been enough to kill him. Tianxiong Lai's body immediately retreated, and with a shout, a yellow saint force burst out of his body and enveloped his entire body. He subconsciously reached out his hand to touch his neck, only to see that his hand was already stained with blood. A bone-chilling cold rose up from the bottom of Tianxiong Lai's heart, and his face became pale. Jianshan's strength had completely exceeded his expectations. At this moment, Tianxiong Lai couldn't help but doubt himself. With his strength, would he really be able to capture the murderer of his son? Everyone, please lend me a hand. Tianxiong Lai didn't hesitate in the slightest, and immediately called out to the people who were watching from the sidelines. Hearing Tianxiong Lai's cry for help, the people who had been invited by Tianxiong Lai hesitated for a moment before rushing towards Jianshan, blocking his path. Who dares to cause trouble in my Tianxiong clan? Are you tired of living? At this moment, a loud and clear voice suddenly rang out. Just as the voice fell, a figure could be seen leaping over the walls from the back of the Tianxiong clan's courtyard. Very quickly, he arrived in the middle of the battlefield. This person was around 40 years old, and wore a luxurious white robe. His appearance was somewhat similar to Tianxiong Lai's. When this person's gaze fell upon the battered Tianxiong Lai, his expression couldn't help but tighten. He quickly walked over to Tianxiong Lai and asked with concern, "Big brother, are you all right?" This person was Tianxiong Lai's younger brother, Tianxiong Daoyin. Tianxiong Lai slightly shook his head and said in a low voice, "I'm fine." Tianxiong Daoyin swept his eyes over the surroundings, and finally his gaze fell upon Jianchen. A strong killing intent flashed in his eyes as he asked, "Big brother, who is he?" Hearing this, Tianxiong Lai gloomily stared at Jianchen. Gnashing his teeth, he said, "Daoyin, he's the one who killed your nephew." Hearing this, Tianxiong Daoyin's face suddenly became gloomy. His face was filled with killing intent as he stared at Jianchen. In a low voice, he said, "So you're the one who killed my nephew, Tianxiong Kong." Jianchen's gaze swept over Tianxiong Lai and finally stopped at the few people in front of him. There were a total of 7 people. Aside from the 2 old men, the other 5 were middle-aged men. From the aura emitted by these people, Jianchen could feel that these 7 people were all great saint masters. Among them, the 2 old men and the middle-aged man wearing tight black clothes were at the peak of great saint master. "Gentlemen, this is a personal matter between me and the Tianxiong clan. It has nothing to do with you. Do you really want to get involved?" Jianchen's face was calm as he stared at the 7 people in front of him. Chapter 225. Seeing that the 7 people didn't say anything, Jianchen couldn't help but sneer. "Since it's like this, then don't blame me for being impolite." As soon as he finished speaking, Jianchen's arm shook and the light wind sword turned into a sky full of sword shadows that enveloped the 7 people in front of him. The 7 people's faces became serious. Not daring to be careless, they immediately took out their respective saint weapons to block the sword shadows. Jianchen's sword was very fast, and the frequency of his attacks was also unbelievably fast. Fighting 1 against 7, not only was he not at a disadvantage, but he was also completely suppressing the 7 people. Sword chi crisscrossed the battlefield, and from time to time, the sword chi would shoot out in all directions, piercing through the bodies of the Tianxiong clan's guards. The energy ripples from the collision of weapons spread out, crushing the solid stone floor into powder. The crisp sounds of the weapons colliding rang out incessantly. In just 2 short breaths of time, Jianchen and the 7 people had already exchanged a few dozen blows. At this moment, the 7 people's faces had become serious. Although they already knew that Jianchen's sword was very fast, now that they had personally experienced it, they truly understood just how terrifying Jianchen's sword was. In this short period of time, 2 of them had been injured because they couldn't dodge in time. If it weren't for the people next to them blocking Jianchen's next attack, they would have been killed in just a few exchanges under Jianchen's torrential attacks. Seeing that Jianchen was still so fierce even against 7 people, Tianxiong Lai and Tianxiong Daoyin didn't dare delay. The 2 of them immediately joined the battle and joined forces with the 7 people. With 9 great saint masters fighting against Jianchen. In the distance, the Tianxiong clan's guards were also standing far away, watching the battle unfold without blinking. A battle between 10 great saint masters, and 9 of them attacking one person, was a scene rarely seen in a small place like Wake City. Although the sword chi that shot out from the battlefield occasionally injured them, it didn't scare them in the slightest. Jianchen's body had already turned into a white blur as he quickly moved back and forth, dodging the attacks coming from all directions while counterattacking. The light wind sword in his hand had already turned into a blur as it pierced towards the 9 people with lightning speed. Ding! Following the sound of weapons colliding, Jianchen's light wind sword blocked the saint weapon in front of him. But at that moment, a biting cold wind came from behind him. With a slight sound, the biting cold wind pressed down on Jianchen's back, causing the clothes on his back to stick tightly to his back. All he could see was a large axe emitting a yellow saint force coming towards him. However, just as the axe was about to hit Jianchen, Jianchen's body slightly swayed, leaving behind an afterimage as he took a step to the side, dodging the axe's attack. At the same time, Jianchen's body suddenly turned around, the light wind sword emitting a sharp sword chi, as if it had transformed into a poisonous snake, silently stabbing towards the axe with lightning speed. Tianxiong Lai's face was solemn as he stared at Jianchen's sword. Regarding Jianxin's lightning-fast sword skills, he had already experienced them before, so this time he had made ample preparations. The surging Earth Saint force formed a solid shield around his body as he twisted his upper body to the side. At the same time, the axe that he had just swung out was also swung back towards Jianxin's light wind sword. Although the axe had looked fierce, Tian Xianglai had actually held back a bit. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to change the direction of his attack so easily. The corners of Jianxin's mouth curled up into a cold smile. He was extremely disdainful of Tian Xianglai's actions. His eyes flashed with killing intent as the sword that he had just swung out followed after Tian Xianglai's body. Not only that, but the sword's speed had increased by another 3 times. Looking at the sword that was chasing after him, Tian Xianglai's face paled. This was because he suddenly realized that he couldn't escape from this sword. When the sword's sharp tip came into contact with the Saint Force shield around Tian Xianglai's body, it only paused for a moment. But in the next moment, the Earth Saint Force shield was shattered and the light wind sword returned to its original speed, piercing towards Tian Xianglai's throat. However, just as Tian Xianglai's life was hanging by a thread, a curved blade came through the air and heavily struck the light wind sword. The light wind sword that had been piercing towards Tian Xianglai's throat was suddenly diverted. A few strands of black hair slowly floated down from Tian Xianglai's chin. The short beard on his chin had actually been neatly cut off. Tian Xianglai's forehead was covered with beads of sweat. If the curved blade had come just a bit later, he wouldn't have been able to stand there in one piece. Not only was Jianxin's sword extremely fast, but it was also extremely flexible. This had greatly exceeded Tian Xianglai's expectations. At this moment, the other 7 also seized the opportunity when Jianxin's saint weapon had been knocked off course and struck out at the same time with great teamwork. 7 or 8 saint weapons slashed out from different directions without any order. The surging saint force from the saint weapons wove together in the air, forming an invisible net that locked down the surrounding space and sealed off all of Jianxin's paths of retreat. Jianxin coldly snorted. The light wind sword in his hand suddenly shook and turned into a blur as it pierced towards Tian Xianglai. As for the other saint weapons that were attacking him from all directions, it was as if they didn't exist. Facing Jianxin's all-out attack, the Saint Master in front of him was only able to block 3 strikes before being forced back by Jianxin's light wind sword. As soon as the Saint Master was forced back, Jianxin's right foot stomped on the ground and his body shot forward like a cannonball towards Tian Xianglai. Following the sound of something breaking through the air, Jianxin's body shot forward. The remaining 6 saint weapons came slashing towards him from behind. One of the saint weapons almost brushed past Jianxin's clothes. Tian Xianglai had just escaped from a dangerous situation, but he hadn't expected Jianxin to come so quickly. His face couldn't help but change color. Then, as if he knew that Jianxin's next attack was aimed at his throat, he immediately used the axe in front of him to block. The axe's wide surface covered his entire upper body. But in the next moment, Tian Xianglai felt his Saint Force shield shatter once again. Following that, he felt a huge sense of danger. But this time, before he could even react, he felt a slight pain in his throat. He didn't know when, but Jianxin had already circled around to Tian Xianglai's back. The light wind sword had directly pierced through Tian Xianglai's throat. Chapter 226. Tian Xianglai's face was filled with disbelief. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that Jianxin, who was as weak as an ant a year ago, would become so strong today. What was even more unbelievable was that he would actually die at his hands. Originally, when he found out that the person who had annihilated the Zhou clan was a youth named Jianxin, he immediately thought of the youth who had killed his son, Tian Xiongkang, a year ago. He thought that Jianxin had found a helper to annihilate the Zhou clan. Although Tian Xianglai was surprised that Jianxin was able to annihilate the Zhou clan, which was not much weaker than the Tianxiong clan, he wasn't too worried. This was because the Tianxiong clan's strength was much greater than the Zhou clan's. If he could invite a few of his good friends over, then they would become an unrivaled force in Wake City. Therefore, early in the morning, Tian Xianglai invited a few of his good friends as well as the leaders of 2 clans that he had good relations with. Although he wanted to borrow their strength to deal with the possible help from Jianchen, it was more to prevent Jianchen from escaping. After all, a year ago, Jianchen had repeatedly escaped from Tianxianglai's hands and disappeared without a trace. Today, Tianxianglai wanted to capture Jianchen no matter what to avenge his son. But what Tianxianglai didn't expect was that after a year of transformation, the current Jianchen was no longer the weakling that could only be slaughtered by him. In just a short year, Jianchen's strength had undergone a complete transformation. From a weakling that could be slaughtered by him, he had become an expert that could easily kill him. Tianxianglai's mind was filled with these thoughts. Even now, he still felt that the scene in front of him was unreal. It was as if this was a nightmare. He, his younger brother Tianxiang Daoyun, who was also a mid-level Great Saint Master, had joined forces with 7 other Great Saint Masters to attack together. Not only had they not been able to capture Jianchen, but they had also been killed. The life force in Tianxianglai's body was quickly draining away. In the end, Tianxianglai was unable to say a single word. His face was filled with unwillingness as he slowly fell to the ground. Tianxiang Daoyun and the other 7 Great Saint Masters who had been invited by Tianxianglai stared blankly at Tianxianglai as he slowly fell to the ground. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Even the hundreds of Tianxiang clan's guards who had gathered around were all staring blankly at Tianxianglai, whose throat had been pierced by Jianchen's sword. The head of Wake City's #1 family, and a Great Saint Master with the advantage of Earth attribute Saint Force, had fallen in front of their eyes. "Big brother." Suddenly, a voice filled with grief and indignation rang out from Tianxiang Daoyun's mouth. Tianxiang Daoyun charged at Jianchen with a face filled with grief, his huge sword brimming with Saint Force as he slashed at Jianchen's head. Seeing the furious Tianxiang Daoyun charging at him, Jianchen's eyes flashed with a cold light. His light wind sword transformed into a blurry sword image as it pierced towards Tianxiang Daoyun's saint weapon. When the two weapons collided, a crisp sound rang out as a shockwave of energy spread out in all directions. The two saint weapons were also repelled by the force of the collision. However, with a twist of his wrist, Jianchen cleverly dispelled the recoil from the light wind sword. Then, his sword turned into a silver light as it pierced towards Tianxiang Daoyun's throat. Seeing the light wind sword coming towards him, Tianxiang Daoyun endured the numbness in his arm. Ignoring the recoil from the light wind sword that had yet to dissipate, he immediately pulled back his sword and used it to block in front of him. The speed of Jianchen's sword was extremely fast. If Tianxiang Daoyun had been prepared, he would have been able to block 1 or 2 of Jianchen's attacks. But now that he had pulled back his sword, he could only block 1 or 2 of Jianchen's attacks. Just as Tianxiang Daoyun was about to use his sword to block, the light wind sword was already less than a foot away from the light wind sword. At this time, the light wind sword suddenly emitted a faint purple and green light. Although the purple and green light was very faint, it was mixed with the silver light of the light wind sword. It was like a bright lamp in the middle of the night. It was very eye-catching. Before the tip of the light wind sword could make contact with Tianxiang Daoyun's sword, the purple and green light on the light wind sword had already come into contact with the light wind sword. Tianxiang Daoyun's light wind sword, which was even harder than steel, had actually melted into a small crack. Following that, the light wind sword passed through the crack without any resistance. In front of the purple and green light, Tianxiang Daoyun's incomparably hard saint weapon was actually as weak as tofu. Pooh! The light wind sword's sharp tip pierced through Tianxiang Daoyun's throat in front of his shocked and incredulous eyes. Seeing Jianchen's light wind sword pierce through Tianxiang Daoyun's saint weapon and into his throat, the other 7 great saint masters who had yet to make a move opened their eyes wide. They stared at the light wind sword in Tianxiang Daoyun's light wind sword with a face full of shock. If Jianchen had been able to fight against 9 great saint masters by himself, then they would have been shocked. But at this moment, Jianchen had actually pierced through a great saint master's saint weapon without making a single sound. This caused them to be completely shocked. Once a saint weapon was taken out of the body, it would become extremely hard. Moreover, it would continuously increase in strength along with its wielder. When fighting against an opponent of the same level, no matter how hard the saint weapon collided, there wouldn't be any damage. If one wanted to damage an opponent's saint weapon, especially one that was in the hands of a great saint master, then even an earth saint master might not be able to do it. But Jianxin had so easily pierced through a great saint master's saint weapon without making a single sound. This scene caused the other 7 great saint masters to wonder if Jianxin was actually a peak heaven saint master. Tianxiong Daoyun's face was full of shock as he stared at the sword that had pierced through his saint weapon and into his throat. His face was filled with disbelief. As his life was about to end, he only had one thought in his mind. Just how did Jianxin pierce through his saint weapon? No matter how much he wanted to ask this question, Tianxiong Daoyun's throat had been pierced through and he was unable to speak. In the end, he could only carry his confusion and unwillingness as he slowly fell to the ground. His empty eyes were wide open as he stared blankly in front of him, unable to rest in peace. Afterwards, Jianxin's gaze once again turned to the other 7 great saint masters. The killing intent in his eyes was not concealed at all. The hazy silver light on the light wind sword had unknowingly become even more intense, as if it was resonating with Jianxin's killing intent. Chapter 227. The 7 of them could feel the killing intent in Jianxin's heart. Their faces turned pale. If it was said that Jianxin's method of killing Tianxiong Lai had surprised them, then the method he used to kill Tianxiong Daoyun had completely frightened them. The saint weapon in Tianxiong Daoyun's hand was easily pierced through by Jianxin. This scene directly showed that if Jianxin really wanted to kill them, it would be as easy as pinching an ant to death. Although the saint weapon was a person's weapon, it was also linked to their lives. If the saint weapon was destroyed, then they wouldn't be able to survive. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, they would only be reduced to a cripple. The scene in front of them proved that if Jianxin wanted to destroy their saint weapon, it would be an extremely easy matter. When they thought about how they had been walking on the edge of life and death, they felt a burst of fear. At this moment, the 7 great saint masters no longer had the courage to fight in their hearts. The gaze they looked at Jianxin with was completely different from before. It was a gaze filled with fear, mixed with a little bit of panic. "Stop, little brother, please be merciful." Facing Jianxin's cold gaze filled with killing intent, an old man hurriedly shouted. At the same time, the saint weapon in his hand disappeared. He had already given up on the idea of continuing to be enemies with Jianxin. Hearing this, Jianxin coldly snorted. "Show mercy? That sounds nice. I told you not to interfere in this matter before, but you insisted on getting involved. You can't blame me for this." Jianxin's words made the 7 people's faces turn ugly. The old man who spoke before opened his mouth again. "Little brother, this is a complete misunderstanding. We are not people of the Tianxiong clan. We were completely invited by the Tianxiong clan. As long as you let us go today, we will be endlessly grateful." "That's right, little brother. As long as you let us go today, we will be greatly grateful." Another old man hurriedly opened his mouth. At this critical moment, when their lives were in danger, they had already given up their noble status. Jianxin's method of killing Tianxiong Daoyun had already frightened them to the point that they lost the strength to resist. To them, preserving their lives today was more important than anything else. Most importantly, they had no enmity with Jianxin. Today, they were completely invited by Tianxiong Lai, so they had no choice but to get involved in this matter. Jianxin's eyes flashed as he stared at the 7 people in front of him. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. After a moment, a slight smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "Since it is so, I will give you a chance to live." Hearing this, the 7 great saint masters' eyes. The 5 men's eyes, the desire to live. Seeing the desire in their eyes, Jianxin's smile became even wider. He slowly said, "You only have one chance to live, and that is to pledge allegiance to me." Hearing this, the expressions of the 7 great saint masters changed. Their faces immediately became unsightly. They were all silent, and it was clear that they were having an intense struggle in their hearts. Seeing the 7 people's hesitation, Jianxin's face was cold, but his heart was filled with joy. Previously, he had used the Azure Sword Qi to kill Tianxiong Daoyun. It seemed like he was using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken, but this was something that Xianxia had planned long ago. His goal was very simple. It was to act as a deterrent and subdue these 7 people. It was time for the Flame Mercenary group to expand. Of course, if they were stubborn and refused to pledge allegiance to Xianxia, then Xianxia wouldn't hesitate to kill them. However, looking at the 7 people's expressions, Xianxia understood that his plan was already halfway to success. In the end, it was up to whether or not the 7 of them were willing to pledge allegiance to him. Xianxia also understood the principle of striking while the iron was hot. He said, "I know that with your strength, you are all people with a lot of prestige in Wake City. Don't think that pledging allegiance to me is a great humiliation. On the contrary, if you pledge allegiance to me, I, Xianxia, guarantee that your future accomplishments will far surpass your imaginations. You may even reach a height that you don't even dare to imagine. It's far from what a small place like Wake City can compare to. Don't doubt my ability." Hearing this, the 7 people's eyes lit up. At this moment, it was as if they had a telepathic connection. They all thought that at such a young age, Xianxia's strength was far beyond their reach. Didn't this prove that Xianxia's identity wasn't simple? Of course, some of them even thought that Xianxia must be a disciple of a large family. Thinking up to here, the 7 people couldn't help but feel that pledging allegiance to Xianxia wasn't something that they would be embarrassed about. Instead, it was a great opportunity in front of them. If they followed Xianxia, they might be able to reach a height that they didn't even dare to imagine. Okay, I, Vaz, represent Wake City's Daer family to pledge allegiance to Master. From now on, I will follow Master's lead. The old man who spoke first was the first to agree to Xianxia's request. Hearing this, Xianxia's face couldn't help but reveal a trace of happiness. I, Kai Heir, represent the Kai family to pledge allegiance to Master. From now on, I will follow Master's orders. The second old man also spoke. The smile on Xianxia's face became even wider. He never thought that one of the 2 old men would represent the Kai family, while the other would represent the Daer family. Although these 2 families weren't as famous as the Tianxiong family or the Zhou family, Xianxia had still heard of them. What about the 5 of you? Following this, Xianxia's gaze turned to the other 5 middle-aged men. Great Saint Masters could already be considered pretty good fighters on the Tianyuan continent. If he could rope them in, Xianxia really didn't want to kill them. This was because there was no one else in the Flame Mercenaries other than himself and Ming Dong. If he wanted to bring the Flame Mercenaries to greater heights, the only way was to expand their strength. Okay, I'm willing to pledge allegiance to you. However, I can't guarantee our brothers in the mercenary group. Following this, the other 5 middle-aged men all spoke. All of them agreed to pledge allegiance to Xianxia and serve Xianxia as their leader. In the distance, the several hundred guards of the Tianxiong family were dumbstruck as they watched this dramatic scene unfold. Everyone was shocked, speechless. These 7 people were all famous people in Wake City. They had originally been invited by Tianxiong Lai to deal with Xianxia, but they never thought that in the blink of an eye, these 7 people would do something that would make their eyes pop out of their sockets. The 7 of them actually pledged allegiance to Tianxiong Lai's killer. Chapter 228. Xianxia's gaze slowly swept past the 7 great Saint Masters as a smile appeared on his face. It was a smile of happiness. At this moment, his heart was filled with joy. From now on, the Flame Mercenaries would no longer be a lone wolf. With the addition of these 7 great Saint Masters, the strength of the Flame Mercenaries had increased by a lot. Although Xianxia wasn't sure if these 7 people were truly loyal to him or if they would betray him, none of this was important to Xianxia. He had only accepted these 7 people to temporarily increase the strength of the Flame Mercenaries. He had sent them to complete missions to increase the Flame Mercenaries' level. It could be said that Xianxia was only using them. As for whether or not he would use them in the end, that would take a long time. You 5, introduce yourselves. Xianxia said to the 5 middle-aged men. Hearing this, the 5 middle-aged men hesitated for a moment before one of them, wearing a black robe, said, "My name is Seth, and I am the captain of the hot-blooded mercenaries. My name is Duo Kong, and I am the captain of the Golden Dragon Mercenaries. My name is Chaka, and I am the captain of the Chaka Mercenaries. My name is Emotion, and I am the captain of the Slaughter Mercenaries. My name is Qingfeng, and I am the captain of the Zephyr Mercenaries. The 5 middle-aged men reported their names one by one, but after hearing their self-introductions, Jianshan was secretly surprised. He never thought that these 5 people would all be captains of a mercenary group. If that was the case, didn't that mean that he now controlled 5 mercenary groups and 2 families with quite a bit of reputation in Wake City? Thinking up to this point, Jianshan felt extremely satisfied with his gains today. He never thought that he, who was originally all by himself, would suddenly become the captain of a large force in the blink of an eye. Of course, Jianshan also knew that although this force was very powerful in Wake City, it was nothing in the Tianyuan continent. Qingfeng, the Qingfeng mercenaries. When Jianshan heard the last person report his name, a look of surprise flashed through his eyes. This name was actually the same as the name of his sword. This was just too much of a coincidence. Jianshan took a deep look at the middle-aged man named Qingfeng. This middle-aged man was around 40 years old and had a scholarly appearance. He wore a white robe and had a head of long black hair that casually draped over his back. When the wind blew, it caused a few strands of hair to flutter in the wind. The 2 eyebrows above his eyes looked like sharp swords, and when paired with his bright and spirited eyes, they gave off a feeling of sharpness. Slowly moving his gaze away from Qingfeng, Jianshan's gaze swept across the group of dumbfounded guards in the distance. In a clear voice, he said, "Tianxiong Lai is dead. From now on, there is no longer a Tianxiong clan in Wake City. I know that many of you are guards that the Tianxiong clan spent a lot of money to hire. Today, I am in a good mood and do not wish to kill the innocent. You may all leave." Hearing this, the several hundred guards seemed to have awoken from a dream. Each and every one of them looked at Jianshan, the 7 Saint Masters, and the dead Tianxiong Lai brothers with a complicated expression. The entire area was silent, to the point that it was somewhat strange. "Thank you, great hero, for not killing us. Thank you, great hero, for not killing us." After a while, the strange silence was finally broken. Many people bowed to Jianshan and loudly expressed their thanks. Finally, they returned to their own residences and packed their things before leaving without any reluctance. Very quickly, the several hundred guards of the Tianxiong clan left one after another. In the end, only about 40 people remained in their original positions, unwilling to leave. Jianshan looked at these people and couldn't help but frown. "Why are you still here?" Hearing this, the dozens of guards were silent for a while. Soon after, a tall and sturdy man walked out with large strides. His eyes were fixed on Jianshan's youthful face as he said, "Great hero, I wish to follow you. Can you accept me?" "Follow me?" Hearing this, Jianshan's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. He carefully sized up the man who spoke. This man was about 30 years old and had a tall and sturdy body. He was at least 2 meters tall and had a bare waist and a tiger's back. His sturdy muscles gave off an explosive feeling. From this person's aura, Jianshan could roughly estimate that this person had the strength of a Saint Master. Jianshan nodded slightly and said, "Since you are willing to follow me, you can come with me to the mercenary union to register and join my mercenary group." Hearing this, the man immediately revealed a look of joy and hurriedly said, "I will do as you say, great hero. Great hero, I am also willing to follow you and join your mercenary group. Great hero, take me in as well. I am willing to follow by your side." Soon after, the remaining dozens of mercenaries also opened their mouths. Unexpectedly, all of them wanted to follow Jianshan. Although Jianshan had killed Tianxiong Lai, most of them were recruited by Tianxiong Lai with money. It could be said that they had a completely cooperative relationship with Tianxiong Lai. Therefore, Tianxiong Lai's death didn't affect them in the slightest, and they wouldn't shift their hatred to Jianshan because of this. As for their pleas, Jianshan accepted them all with a smile. The strength of these people was generally around the Great Saint realm, and there were also a few Saint Masters. With these people joining, the Flame Mercenary Group's strength would increase by a lot. Although Jianshan didn't know if any of them had ulterior motives or had other motives, This wouldn't cause the slightest bit of hindrance to the current scale of the Flame Mercenary Group. Currently, the Flame Mercenary Group was in urgent need of manpower. Once the Flame Mercenary Group's strength stabilized, he would think of a way to clean up all the malignant tumors within. Apart from Tianxiong Lai and Tianxiong Daoyun, is there anyone else in the Tianxiong clan? Jianshan looked at the 40 people who had all surrendered to him and asked. As soon as Jianshan's voice fell, the burly man who had first suggested following Jianshan immediately replied, "Yes, Tianxiong Lai and 3 other women. They all live in the back courtyard. Great hero, please wait a moment, I will go and capture them all." With that, the burly man ran towards the back courtyard. Afterwards, a few of the more quick-witted people seemed to want to take advantage of this opportunity to perform well in front of Jianshan. They followed closely behind the burly man and ran towards the back courtyard. Seeing these people leave, the faces of a few of the remaining 40-plus people immediately became somewhat gloomy. Sharp killing intent flashed in their eyes as they looked at the few people who had left. Jianshan's gaze swept past these people without leaving a trace, the corner of his mouth curling into an imperceptible sneer. Jianshan had already clearly remembered their appearances. However, Jianshan didn't do anything to these people. To him, these people could still be used well. It wouldn't be too late to deal with them after they had lost their value. Let me go, along with the exclamations of several women from afar, the people who had left earlier escorted 3 women from afar. 2 of them were middle-aged women who were about 30 years old, and the other was a young girl who was about 20 years old. She was quite pretty. Great hero, these 3 are Tianxiong Lai's women. These 2 have followed Tianxiong Lai for many years. As for the younger one, Tianxiong Lai just married her 2 years ago. But Tianxiong Daoyun is a little strange, he doesn't seem to have a wife. Without waiting for Jianshan to ask, the burly man took the initiative to introduce the 3 women to Jianshan. Good. Jianshan nodded slightly. He was very satisfied with the burly man's actions. He didn't think that this burly man would be so meticulous. The 3 women's faces were deathly pale as they looked at the bloody scene. Especially when they saw the corpses of Tianxiong Lai and Tianxiong Daoyun, their eyes were filled with disbelief. The burly man looked at Jianshan's face and a giant axe appeared in his hand. He placed it on the neck of one of the women and asked, "Great hero, these 3 are Tianxiong Lai's women, do you want to kill them all?" Don't kill me, I beg you, don't kill me." Hearing this, the 3 women's faces turned pale with fright. Perhaps they knew that Jianshan was the backbone of this place. They looked at Jianshan with a pair of pitiful eyes. Crystal-clear tears rolled down their cheeks as they begged for mercy. Looking at the pleading eyes of the 3 women, Jianshan secretly sighed. He waved his hand and said, "Fine, let them go." Jianshan couldn't bear to kill these 3 weak women. After all, he wasn't a cold-blooded and heartless person. Yes, great hero. The burly man didn't have the slightest objection to Jianshan's order. He immediately removed the giant axe from the neck of one of the women. Afterwards, Jianshan brought a large group of people and left the Tianxiong clan. The matter of the Tianxiong clan could be said to have been perfectly resolved. The Tianxiong clan hadn't been established for long and couldn't be compared to those clans that had been around for hundreds of years. Therefore, the true backbone of the Tianxiong clan was the 2 brothers, Tianxiong Lai and Tianxiong Daoyun. The news of the Tianxiong clan's destruction quickly spread throughout Wake City. This matter caused a huge uproar in the city. It was so big that it was even bigger than the Zhou clan's destruction. Chapter 229. Jianshan led the 40 people to the mercenary union at the center of Wake City. He planned to recruit all of them into the Flame Mercenary Group. "Hero, how should we address you in the future?" The large man behind Jianshan asked. "My name is Jianshan. Once all of you join my mercenary group, you can call me captain." Jianshan said indifferently. He then turned to the large man behind him and said, "I still don't know your name." Hearing this, the large man chuckled, "My name is Xiong Tai. Captain, you can call me Xiong." But Jianshan nodded slightly. He looked at the 5 captains and said, "What do you plan to do with your mercenary groups?" The 5 middle-aged men hesitated for a while. Duo Kong said, since we plan to follow you in the future, you should make the decision. Xianxia frowned and thought for a while. He said, when we return, you can all disband your mercenary groups. As for the people in your groups, those who are willing to stay can join my flame mercenary group. Those who are unwilling can leave. However, you must keep those who are stronger or have better talent. Do you understand? Understood. The 5 of them replied in a low voice. After a slight pause, Xianxia continued, I know that disbanding your mercenary groups will be difficult for you, but don't worry. You followed the right person. In the future, our flame mercenary group will definitely shake the entire Tianyuan continent. Towards the end, Xianxia's eyes were filled with determination. It was a determination that would not give up until he reached his goal. However, his words were only a joke in the ears of the others. None of them took it seriously. In order to turn an unknown mercenary group into a super mercenary group that could shake the entire Tianyuan continent, they had to go through a lot of hardships. Not to mention anything else, just the current strength of the flame mercenary group was still miles away from this goal. Captain, then what should our Doer clan and Kai clan do? Although our 2 families aren't weak, we aren't like the mercenary group that only develops our military force. Our 2 families are more focused on the development of business. If we disband like the mercenary group, then the loss in business will be very big. Hearing this, Xianxia also fell silent. Ka was right. Although the Kai clan and the Doer clan possessed a certain amount of strength, they focused on business. After all these years of development, they had gained a foothold in the market of Wake City. If they were to disband like this, all the hard work they had over the years would be wasted. Xianxia thought about it for a long time. In the end, he decided to let the Doer clan and the Kai clan continue to develop in the same direction. As for the Vaz and Kyle, the 2 clan heads, they would remain in charge of their own clans. However, from today onwards, Xianxia would be the one controlling the 2 clans from behind the scenes. The group of people majestically walked through the crowded streets, attracting quite a few onlookers. The 7 great Saint Masters in the group had a certain amount of prestige in Wake City. Although they rarely showed themselves, there were still quite a few people who could recognize them. This immediately caused a lot of discussion. On the way to the mercenary union, Xianxia separated from the 5 captains. Afterwards, he brought the 40 people from the Tianxiong clan and the 2 clan heads to the mercenary union. In the mercenary union, the 43 guards of the Tianxiong clan and the 2 patriarchs with the strength of great Saint Masters officially became members of the Flame Mercenaries after completing the relevant procedures. Of the 43 people, 16 were actually Saint Masters. The remaining 27 were all great saints. With the addition of these people and the 7 great Saint Masters, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the Raging Flame Mercenary Group had jumped from a small, unknown mercenary group to the largest power in Wake City in the blink of an eye. Although the Raging Flame Mercenary Group's strength had greatly increased, their rank was still at C rank. If they wanted to increase their rank, the only way was to do as much as they could. After the procedures were completed, Xianxia led the group out of the mercenary union. At that moment, a voice suddenly entered Xianxia's ears. Little brother Xianxia, I've finally found you. Hearing this, Xianxia, who was just about to step out of the mercenary union, couldn't help but stop. He subconsciously looked towards the direction of the voice and saw the leader of the loyal mercenary group, Head of, running towards him with an excited expression on his face. It hadn't even been a day since they parted ways. When he arrived in front of Xianxia, Herdoff looked at the people behind Xianxia with a surprised expression. His gaze then focused on Xianxia as he said, Little brother Xianxia, I have a presumptuous request. I don't know if you can agree to it. Xianxia faintly smiled and said, Captain Herdoff, if there's anything you need, just say it. Xianxia's impression of Herdoff was quite good, so he was quite polite to him. Little brother Xianxia, I want to join your mercenary group and follow you everywhere. I don't know if that's possible. When he said this, Herdoff's expression was somewhat awkward. He was already close to 50 years old, but now he had to follow a young man who was only in his 20s. How could he not feel awkward? Hearing Herdoff's words, Xianxia's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. Herdoff's request had indeed far exceeded Xianxia's expectations. Although he was very surprised, Jianshan quickly calmed down and smiled. Since Captain Herdoff is willing to follow me around the Tianyuan continent, this is Jianshan's honor. However, Captain Herdoff, if you do this, what will happen to the Righteous Spirit Mercenary Group? The matter of the Righteous Spirit Mercenary Group was already taken care of when we parted yesterday. I have already passed the position of captain to a capable brother. I am no longer a member of the Righteous Spirit Mercenary Group. Saying this, Herdoff pointed at the 5 people behind him and said, I believe little brother Jianshan has seen these 5 brothers before. They are all my brothers. This time, they left the Righteous Spirit Mercenary Group with me and planned to follow little brother Jianshan. Herdoff's vision was very far. Perhaps it was because of Jianshan's ability to easily kill the war behemoth, as well as Jianshan's strength at such a young age that he could see how extraordinary Jianshan was. Therefore, he decisively made the decision to abandon the Righteous Spirit Mercenary Group that he had spent over 10 years to establish and join Jianshan. Jianshan looked at the 5 people behind Herdoff. These 5 people were no strangers to him. They were the other 5 Saint Masters of the Righteous Spirit Mercenary Group. Jianshan obviously wouldn't refuse their offer to join. He immediately went through the necessary procedures with Herdoff and the others, and the Flame Mercenary Group gained another 6 Saint Masters. Chapter 230. It was impossible for Jianshan to refuse an invitation from the city lord of Wake City. Moreover, he had an important matter that he needed the city lord's help with. Commander Duo Li, I'll go after I've dealt with the matters here. Jianshan clasped his hands. Jianshan still had not settled down the new members of the Flame Mercenaries. If he left them here without a care, it was inevitable that some of them would become dissatisfied with him. This was something that Jianshan did not wish to see happen. All right then. Since I've passed on the message, I'll be taking my leave first. Commander Duo Li stared deeply at Jianshan before glancing at the people behind him. He did not say anything else and directly left the Mercenary Union. As soon as Dali left, Jianshan left the Mercenary Union with the new members of the Flame Mercenaries in a grandiose fashion. There were usually many people gathered in the Mercenary Union. It was very common for 20 to 30 people to enter and leave the Mercenary Union at the same time. As a result, Jianshan's group did not attract too much attention as they blended in with the crowd. Kyle. Jianshan suddenly called out as he walked. Yes, Captain. What orders do you have for me? Kyle, who seemed to be in his 60s, hurriedly replied. Having witnessed Jianshan's strength, he did not underestimate him because of Jianshan's age. In the past few decades, Kyle had gone from being a small mercenary to his current status. He had experienced many things and seen many things, so he understood extremely well that having a powerful backer on the Tianyuan continent would be much better than having to develop by himself. At the same time, if his backer was powerful enough, he would be able to walk with much more confidence in the future. Even people stronger than him would not dare to offend him. Although Jianshan was only in his 20s, Kyle was certain that Jianshan had a powerful background just from the fact that he possessed such strength at such a young age. Even if he did not have any background, just his talent in cultivation was enough for Kyle to follow him. Clearly Vaz, who was also the patriarch of the clan, thought the same as Kyle. As a result, the two of them were the first to agree to follow Jianshan. They had already predicted that if Jianshan could continue on his path, he would definitely be able to stand at the peak of the Tianyuan continent in the future. This was the perfect opportunity for them to climb to the peak of the future. If they waited until Jianshan's name shook the continent and he stood at the peak of the continent, it would be impossible for them to climb up to this uncle even if they wanted to. Bring everyone to stay in your clan for now. You'll have to go to the city lord's estate immediately. There's no time to arrange another residence, Jianshan said indifferently. Yes, Captain. Kyle immediately replied respectfully. Vaz, you should return to your clan as well. In the future, the two of you will do business in Wake City and work together to take control of all the businesses in Wake City. Don't worry, Captain. If our Kai clan and Daer clan work together, even the Tianxiong clan would have to be wary of us. Now that the Zhou clan and Tianxiong clan have been destroyed, there will be no one to manage their businesses. We can take advantage of this opportunity to fight for them and use them as a foundation to slowly take control of the entire Wake City market. However, during this period of time, I'm afraid that we will need some military support. After all, there are still some powers in Wake City that cannot be underestimated. If they work together, just our Kai clan and Daer clan will not be their match. Xianxia nodded in agreement. After a moment of silence, he said, "Let's not rush this matter for now. Right now, Wake City is about to be attacked by the magical beast wave. Let's wait until the magical beast wave is over before we talk about it." After arranging the temporary accommodations for the members of the Flame Mercenary Group, Xianxia went straight to the City Lord's mansion. When Xianxia arrived at the gate of the City Lord's mansion, a guard stopped Xianxia and politely asked, "Excuse me, are you Mr. Xianxia?" "Yes, it's me." Xianxia glanced at the guard. "Mr. Xianxia, please wait for a moment. I will go and report." After confirming Xianxia's identity, the guard immediately ran inside. Seeing the guard disappear into the gate, Xianxia didn't show the slightest trace of impatience. He quietly stood at the gate and patiently waited. Not long after, Xianxia saw the city lord, dressed in casual clothes, stride out of the gate. Little brother Xianxia, why are you standing outside?" It's my fault for not being a good host. Please come in." City Lord Yunli had a smile on his face as he greeted Xianxia from afar. His face was full of enthusiasm. Xianxia faintly smiled. After exchanging a few pleasantries with City Lord Yunli, he was invited in. In a quiet meeting room, Xianxia and City Lord Yunli sat across from each other. As soon as they sat down, Xianxia opened his mouth and asked, "May I ask why City Lord has called me here?" Hearing this, City Lord Yunli let out a long sigh. The smile on his face disappeared and was replaced by a heavy expression. "Little brother Xianxia, after what you've done, our Wake City strength has decreased by quite a bit. The pressure from the magical beast wave is only increasing." City Lord Yunli's face was filled with unspeakable bitterness. His face was filled with worry. Hearing this, Xianxia faintly smiled and said, "City Lord, please allow me to ask if there have been any cases of Class 5 magical beasts in the past." City Lord Yunli's expression became heavy after hearing Xianxia's words. He said, "There have been. The magical beast mountain range attacks Wake City almost every 10 or 20 years. According to the records, since the founding of Wake City, there have been more than 20 magical beasts. During that time, there have been 5 Class 5 magical beasts. Out of these 5, the first 4 of them caused considerable damage to Wake City. We paid an extremely heavy price to kill the Class 5 magical beast. But the last Class 5 magical beast attack, because we notified Royal City in time, Royal City sent Earth Saint Masters to deal with the Class 5 magical beast. That's why the last Class 5 magical beast attack didn't cause too much damage to us." "Oh, so that means the chances of a Class 5 magical beast appearing aren't very high," Xianxia muttered in a low voice. Then, a confident smile appeared on his face. "City Lord Yunli, you can rest assured that Xianxia will definitely do his best to help Wake City defend against the magical beast attack. As long as no Class 5 magical beast appears this time, there shouldn't be too much of a problem. Although we lost Tianxiong Lai and the other 2 great Saint Masters, I alone will be able to make up for their losses. In fact, I might even be able to surpass them." With little brother Xianxia's words, I can relax a lot. I believe that little brother Xianxia isn't the kind of person to speak without thinking. City Lord Yunli's tightly knitted eyebrows also relaxed after hearing Xianxia's words. Although he hadn't personally witnessed Xianxia's strength, he was very clear in his heart. The destruction of the Tianxiong clan and the Zhou clan was the best evidence. City Lord, something bad has happened." Right at this moment, a loud shout mixed with a bit of panic came from outside. Then, this tightly shut meeting room was directly rudely pushed open without any notice. A soldier covered in blood rushed in from outside with an anxious face. "City Lord, something bad has happened. Our small scouting team was carrying out a scouting mission in the Magic Beast Forest when we suddenly discovered a level 5 magic beast. Apart from me who was lucky enough to escape, the rest of our team were all killed." As soon as the soldier entered the meeting room, he immediately reported while panting. Chapter 231. What? A Class 5 magical beast? The soldier's words were like a clap of thunder in the silent meeting room. Hearing this, Yun Li's expression changed and he immediately stood up from his chair. Taking a big stride forward, he grabbed the soldier's collar and said with disbelief and shock, "What did you say? You found a Class 5 magical beast?" Yun Li's words were almost a roar. Yes, Mayor. We found a Class 5 magical beast in the outskirts of the Magical Beast Mountain Range. The soldier's voice trembled as he spoke, his face pale. Xianxian's expression also became serious when he heard the words Class 5 magical beast. A Class 5 magical beast's strength was comparable to an Earth Saint Master. Furthermore, due to the innate advantage of magical beasts, if a human didn't have a powerful battle technique, they would definitely not be a match for a magical beast. Furthermore, a Class 5 magical beast in a remote area like Wake City, where Earth Saint Masters rarely set foot, was an invincible existence. The difference between Class 5 and Class 4 was like the difference between Great Saint Masters and Earth Saint Masters. It was a divide in strength. The difference between the two was like the difference between heaven and earth. It was simply incomparable. The difference between a Great Saint Master and an Earth Saint Master was like a primary Saint Master who had just condensed a Saint weapon fighting against an existence at the peak of Great Saint Master. It was basically undefeatable and even killing him would be extremely difficult. Although Xianxian had killed 2 Class 5 magical beasts in the Magical Beast Mountain Range, both of them had been injured to the point that they didn't even have the strength to stand up. They only had the strength to launch a single attack. Even so, Xianxian's life had been hanging by a thread. In the end, he had paid a heavy price to kill them. Xianxian didn't doubt that if a Class 5 magical beast was in its peak condition, it would definitely be stronger than the Earth Saint Master who had tried to kill him in Fengyang City. However, the appearance of a Class 5 magical beast only increased the pressure on him. This was because he now had the help of the Azure Sword spirits, so his attack power was much stronger than before. He was confident that he could use his advantage to kill a Class 5 magical beast at its peak condition, as long as he didn't encounter a monster like the silver-striped golden snake. Oh no, things are getting serious. This time, a magical beast of the 5th rank has appeared. City Lord Yun Li's expression became incomparably solemn as his brows furrowed. After thinking for a moment, he muttered, "This won't do. With the strength of our Wake City, there is no way we can withstand the attack of a Class 5 magical beast. I have to immediately ask for reinforcements from Royal City. Only then can we minimize the casualties of our Wake City." Thinking of this, Yun Li did not hesitate and immediately walked out. He did not even have time to greet Xianxian. A Class 5 magical beast was a powerful existence that could decide the fate of Wake City. He couldn't afford to let his guard down. Therefore, he had to ask for help from the Royal City as soon as possible. He had to ask the higher-ups to send experts to deal with the Class 5 magical beast. City Lord Yun Li walked into the study room with a serious look on his face. He took a pen and began to write on a piece of paper. Finally, he stamped the paper and rolled it into a small cylinder. He then carefully tied it with a string. Men immediately used the fastest messenger bird to deliver this secret letter to the City Lord's mansion in King City. "Yes, City Lord." Immediately, a soldier ran in from outside and carefully took the letter from City Lord Yun Li's hand before retreating. "Pass down my orders. This time, the appearance of a Class 5 magical beast must be kept a secret. At this time, we cannot afford to lose control. Also, immediately call for the Mercenary Union branch in Wake City. At the same time, pay close attention to any movements in the Magical Beast Mountain Range." City Lord Yun Li immediately gave an order to the soldiers outside the study, and the soldiers who were waiting outside the study immediately retreated after receiving the order. The news of the appearance of a Class 5 magical beast was too big of a shock for City Lord Yun Li. However, he did not intend to announce such a big matter. He thought that once the news spread, the fearsome name of a Class 5 magical beast would deter many people. At that time, there would definitely be many people who were afraid of death who would choose to leave Wake City. As a result, the city's defensive strength would plummet. In the end, the entire city would be overwhelmed by the magical beasts. Right now, City Lord Yun Li's only hope was that the City Lord would be able to send experts to deal with the Class 5 magical beast. Otherwise, even if Wake City was able to successfully repel the magical beast wave, the casualties would definitely be disastrous. Jianchen left the City Lord's mansion alone. Although the appearance of a Class 5 magical beast put a lot of pressure on him, it didn't affect him much. Instead, it made him secretly look forward to the battle. His sword chi was able to cut through the war behemoth's defenses like tofu. This war behemoth that was said to be extremely difficult to kill even for an Earth Saint Master was unable to resist the sword chi at all. From this, it could be seen how powerful the sword chi was. He wondered just how effective it would be on a Class 5 magical beast. Jianchen followed the path in his memory and quickly found the Kai clan. Right now, the several dozen people who had just joined the Flame Mercenaries were all temporarily living in the Kai clan. They had been arranged to live in a separate courtyard by Kyle. The Kai clan was a small clan that had only been established for around 30 years. In terms of background, they could not compare to the Zhou clan. Thus, the Kai clan only had around 100 guards and martial artists. Jianchen was personally led by the armored clan's patriarch, Kyle. Under the astonished gazes of the patrolling guards, he went straight to the courtyard where the Flame Mercenaries were living. The courtyard was a courtyard. Aside from the main entrance, there were houses on all three sides. In the middle of the courtyard was a patch of grass. At this moment, the several dozen people who had just joined the Flame Mercenaries were sitting in groups of 3 to 5 and conversing with one another. Jianchen's arrival immediately caused everyone to stop talking. One by one, they stood up from the ground and politely called out to Jianchen, "Captain, Captain." Jianchen indifferently glanced at the people around him and said, "Seth, Duo Kong, Chaka, Motian, and Qing Feng still haven't arrived?" "Captain, the 5 of them still haven't arrived. They must still be dealing with their own mercenary groups," said a young man around 30 years of age. However, just as he finished speaking, a servant of the Kai clan hurriedly ran over from the distance. He looked at the several dozen men in the courtyard with some surprise. In the end, he whispered to Kyle, who was standing behind Jianchen, "Patriarch, the Golden Dragon Mercenaries, the Charm Mercenaries." Without waiting for the servant to finish, Kyle waved his hand and said, "I understand. You may leave." "Yes, Patriarch." Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.